From The Times and The Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Luke Jones. At the start of last week, Prime Minister Keir Starmer had something of a Downing Street rejig. This was phase 2 of government, he said. Forget the 6 milestones or the 5 missions or the 3 foundations that he'd previously been talking about. Delivery, delivery, delivery.
Delivery, delivery, delivery.
Was now the catchphrase.
And start to show what a difference a Labour government really makes.
And some light musical chairs amongst his number 10 staff is what was needed to, well, deliver it. Done and dusted, you might think. But who knew phase 3 would arrive so soon?
Confirmation now, Angela Rayner has resigned as Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary. She's also resigned as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party.
Well, Angela Rayner's departure was followed this afternoon by a big cabinet reshuffle. So Keir Starmer...
What should we make of the churn and the deputy leadership election that Angela Rayner now leaves in her wake? The story today: what is next for Labour after the Rayner resignation?
My name is Geraldine Scott and I'm the Assistant Political Editor at The Times.
Was Friday very busy for you?
It was chaotic. I don't think it was something that we kind of expected to play out quite like it did. Angela Rayner was found to have broken the ministerial code after a pretty quick investigation by Sir Lawrie Magnus, who is the Prime Minister's independent advisor on ministerial standards. And that's all come about because essentially she admitted that she had underpaid on her stamp duty. She says she took advice. Turns out she didn't take the right advice. And that is really what did it for Angela Rayner in the end. But what we didn't expect was this kind of wholesale reshuffle and this real kind of clear out of people that Keir Starmer clearly didn't feel like was performing and bringing in many, many loyalists. So yeah, big change in government.
And was that always on the cards, some kind of big reshuffle? You know, we see the Home Secretary change, the Foreign Secretary change, or was that all just because Angela Rayner was sacked?
It was on the cards, but it wasn't on the cards for now. That was something that was going to come later on. There have clearly been kind of a level of dissatisfaction, particularly in the Home Office, about the tackling of that small boats issue. You know, we saw all those protests and riots over the summer. So what Keir Starmer did is he, didn't let a good crisis go to waste and used the fact that Angela Rayner had left government to really clear out his top team.
Just on Angela Rayner's exit, what do you think it was exactly that did for her? And was there ever a world in which she could have stuck around and maybe fought it out?
Yeah, I think there was a world where Angela Rayner could have stayed. And I think you can tell from the exchange of letters between the Prime Minister and Angela Rayner that actually he didn't want her to go. He wrote her a very touching, handwritten, in fact, letter.
Saying that he's very sad that she is leaving all her positions in the Labour Party. He says it was the right decision, although it is painful, and he says that she's helped to make the Labour government a success and make Britain fairer for working families.
It was very clear that there was a operation earlier last week, which was essentially a Save Angela Rayner operation. Ministers were going out on the kind of broadcast rounds defending her. That changed later on in the week, all culminating in what Sir Lawrie Magnus found, which was that it was suggested to her that she take specialist tax advice, and she just hadn't done so. So at that stage, and once he had found she had broken the ministerial code, there really was no way she could stay.
So she is gone, and as you say, that has triggered this enormous reshuffle. Not many new people coming into cabinet, or not many people necessarily leaving it, but a great big change of some of the great officers of state. To your mind, what is the most interesting?
Yeah, far be it from me to say that it's rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, but that is what some Labour MPs have been saying over the last few days. But I think among the most interesting of these is moving Shabnam Mahmood to the Home Office from Justice.
So she was Justice Secretary.
She was Justice Secretary, and when she became Justice Secretary, she was confronted with, that crisis of the fact that the prisons were full and had to make that big decision to release people early, and people generally have respected how she has done that role. She's been very impressive in it. So she is one of the most interesting appointments to me, because clearly the small boats issue, immigration, is going to be key for this government. Keir Starmer is putting someone he trusts there. What some people don't know about Shabnam Mahmood is actually her role within Labour goes far back beyond that. She was in charge of turning around the party's campaigning operation, quite a back office role, national campaigns coordinator it is, in the run-up to the election. So she got a lot of praise for that as well, and she is tough. One of the anecdotes I heard about her on Friday when I was, speaking to people inside government was that the other day in the Justice Department, she gave her civil servants a steer on what she wanted, gave them an instruction, and they said to her, "Oh, Minister, that's a very strong steer," which in kind of Whitehall language is, "Oh, that's tough." And her reply was, "I don't give any other kind." So we know that she is tough, and he will be relying on her heavily to fix that small boats issue.
And yet, if he felt like the small boats issue wasn't going to plan, Yvette Cooper has moved up to being Foreign Secretary. How is it that you can do a bad job at the Home Office and then become Foreign Secretary?
Yeah, so I don't think it's that Yvette Cooper was doing a bad job, but that she clearly wasn't prepared to take the more radical steps which Number 10 have been pushing for. So we have seen key changes already. For example, Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, had been suggesting that those arriving in small boats should be kept in military sites, former barracks, that kind of thing. That had been dismissed by the Home Office under Yvette Cooper as unworkable. Angela Eagle, who was a minister in the Home Office, had said because of, the living conditions just can't happen. Well, Shabnam Mahmood has come in and said, no, we'll absolutely consider that. I think there are also differences in their approaches to the ECHR and how that can kind of be changed and reformed.
The European Convention on Human Rights.
That's right, yeah. And that is often used by those who have arrived in this country in order to stay and be granted asylum. Now, Shabnam Mahmood is not of the camp, as we understand it, of outright leaving the ECHR, but is up for making some more radical reforms. So there are clear differences, and she is not afraid to make those changes.
The other policy objective that seems to be eluding them at this point is that of growth. What in this rearranging of deck chairs or musical chairs has been done to address that, do you think?
The big one to look at here is Pat McFadden. Pat McFadden has been moved to the DWP, but he's been given what insiders are calling the super ministry, where skills is being taken into it from education as well. Essentially, what this is getting people back to work, making sure young people have skills for the future in order to push growth. But also, it's pushing through, we imagine, another go at those welfare reforms that were so toxic to Keir Starmer earlier this year, caused that massive rebellion, saw him remove the whip from some of his MPs.
In less than 3 weeks, he has had a significant rebellion and he has suspended 7 of his members of Parliament, all for standing up for child poverty. This from a Labour government.
Pat McFadden going to the DWP really kind of signals to me that they're going to have another go at welfare reform. And this is another Achilles heel of this government. They do not believe you can get growth whilst the welfare bill continues to balloon and more people, are signed off work sick and aren't contributing to the economy. So if you take kind of Shabnam Mahmood and Pat McFadden's appointments together, what you can see there is the two priorities that we're going to hear from this government over the next few months and years.
And that is clear enough. And yet the much, much, much broader ministerial reshuffle, even down into the lower ranks, Minister for Spoons has now become Minister for Forks and all the rest. Why has it been so wide and so deep? You've got people doing jobs that we didn't really know that they were doing and seem to have been cracking on okay, now moving into slightly different jobs.
Yeah, I mean, there are 1 million jobs in government that you don't even know exist day to day, right? Until I remember during the Boris Johnson era when you got people who were signing no confidence letters and you were like, wait, you're an MP? Who are you? And I've been doing this job for 10 years. So how normal people are supposed to follow it, who knows? But my point being is that, yes, there are people, like you say, who you would imagine had been kind of ticking along and doing an okay job who have been moved out. I think what we can read into that is that there has been a wholesale change. There was clearly, an attitude in Number 10 that things weren't working throughout departments, because this has not just been focused on one or two areas. And this is a bit of a march of the loyalists and, frankly, a march of the Blairites. You're seeing people from the right of the party bought in to kind of deliver these priorities, and it is a bit of a snub to the left of the party.
We started by talking about Angela Rayner. She obviously resigned from government. She was Housing Secretary, Deputy Prime Minister, but also Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. And for that, there needs to be an election. Just explain the job and what might be happening with that vacancy now.
Yeah, so this is always where Angela Rayner really held her strength in government, because even if, when she was still in government, if Keir Starmer had wanted to get rid of her as Deputy Prime Minister or as Housing Secretary, she was directly elected as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, which meant she had her own mandate, she had her own support, and Labour's rules say, actually, you can't take that away from her. But she has resigned from that role. That is an elected role rather than appointed. Deputy PM is an appointed role. That's been given to David Lammy as it stands. And we will now have this new election to choose a new deputy leader. And look, it's going to be quite chaotic because later this month, we've got Labour Party conference when people like me and you schlep up to Liverpool and drink warm white wine and listen to various policy debates. I, frankly, was expecting that conference to be quite boring. Now what we're going to have
It's just become worth its train fare.
It's just become worth its train fare. What we're going to have is these people who would like to be deputy leader peacocking and parading around events, because what they're going to want to do is show that they would not be, someone who would blindly kind of follow the Prime Minister and would provide some challenge. As most of these things are in the Labour Party, it's a bit of a strange process. You have to get kind of 80 MPs to back you, and then some unions and some constituency Labour Party groups and things like that. But essentially what we are going to see is a popularity contest. It's going to be fascinating.
When will that conclude?
As we are recording this, Labour's National Executive Committee are meeting to set out that timetable. Usually that would take months and months and months. You'd have hustings, you would have all these kind of things. But as we understand it, they're going to really condense that timeline, have people getting a nomination sorted by the end of the month, which is why that conference is going to be so interesting.
And who are the genuine prospects, do you think, who should be keeping an eye on?
Well, there are a few people to kind of watch out for. So the first person who has said that they are considering standing is Emily Thornberry, big Labour Party figure.
I'm thinking about it, and it's really a question of kind of what can I bring to it. What's important is what you bring. Do you have the strength? Do you have the experience? Can you actually make a difference?
Another one to keep your eye on is Rosanna Allen-Khan. She came second last time round in the deputy leadership contest. You might think that someone like David Lammy, because he is deputy PM, might be kind of the number 10 backed candidate. Other people are talking about Shabnam Mahmood, but I mean, in my eyes, she's got her hands pretty full. Some of the other people being spoke about are Lou Haig, who of course had to resign from government over a fraud scandal.
She appeared at a court in South London and was convicted in relation to an incident that involved misleading the police over an apparently stolen work phone.
Lisa Nandy, Annalise Dodds, Lucy Powell, Richard Bergen has said that he is considering being the kind of left-wing figure in the race. Dawn Butler, just some names to throw at you. But look, basically, there are plenty of people who will be standing on a platform of essentially trying to represent the soft left of the party and telling Keir Starmer he needs to listen to his party more.
But a lot of those who you mentioned at the top of your list, David Lammy aside, the new Lord Chancellor, Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister, are a lot of people who've been broadly critical of Starmer of late. Rosine Allen-Khan is somebody who has been very critical of him. Emily Thornberry, somewhat aggrieved to have not been in government, chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, again, only on Sunday was being quite critical, saying that they weren't listening in number 10. Is all of this just a sort of referendum on how miffed we are with Keir Starmer as Labour MPs? Yes,
is the short answer, but also how miffed are the party membership with Keir Starmer. So this isn't just about MPs, this is about, those who pay their subs to Labour and go along to conference when it isn't their job, and, really care about the heart and soul of the party. And this will be a bit of a referendum on, is this re-saying number 10 what the party members want? Do they feel like they're being listened to on things like welfare, on Gaza, on winter fuel. You know, what is the heart and soul of the Labour Party, and is it currently being represented whilst the party is in government? I think you're right. The people who are probably going to put their names forward for this race would say no, and that is the platform they're going to run on. The question will be, who does the membership think has the most chance, I guess, of making Number 10 listen?
And it's so curious that this person doesn't even necessarily have to be part of government. In fact, lots of the names you mentioned there aren't part of government. So you could end up with a situation where you have a Prime Minister and a Deputy Prime Minister, Keir Starmer and David Lammy, and then insert name of backbench Labour MP who is not in government but is Deputy Leader of the party as voted in by the members and their fellow members of Parliament. That's going to be quite a tricky alternative power base, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a complete mess, absolutely. You know, if you are Keir Starmer and you're trying to push through things that are pretty radical, which are sometimes unpalatable to a traditional Labour voter, maybe, to see off the threat of reform, and then you have this kind of challenge from someone that has their own mandate, doesn't really have to answer to you. And when Angela Rayner held this job, Keir Starmer always had something to hang over Angela Rayner's head. You know, he could sack her from government. This person, like you say, because they won't start in government, well, that leverage is gone. That's a pretty dangerous person to have on the back benches, especially if it is someone who, I don't think they'll be offended me describing them like this, someone like Emily Thornberry, who is pretty gobby, and I say that as a gobby woman myself, that is a compliment, you know, but would not be backwards in coming forwards if they felt like the government needed a bit of a kicking.
Joe, we are discussing the upheaval within the Labour government and also the Labour Party as well, with this deputy leader contest getting underway soon. We were just talking about the complicating factor of having a deputy prime minister who might not be on side being elected. Of course, the other challenge for Starmer going forward is his now ex-deputy Labour leader, somewhere on the backbenches, free of the constraints of holding government positions and party positions, to kick up a fuss if she wants. How big of a problem do you think Angela Rayner is for Starmer on the backbenches?
I think she could be a big problem. She is the second most, or well, when she was still in cabinet, she was the second most popular cabinet minister behind Ed Miliband with Labour members. So she is very, very popular.
Ed Miliband is the most popular cabinet minister amongst Labour members.
Yeah, I know.
That's the takeaway of the whole episode.
But look, she is very, very popular, and she will continue to dine out on that popularity, as she well should. But people will be, you know, pretty obsessed with what she does when she makes interventions, when she gives interviews, what policy positions she takes, I think is dangerous. But arguably, what is more dangerous for Keir Starmer, and some MPs were saying this to me last week, is does he now face a leadership challenge of his own? The received wisdom is that any leadership challenge to Keir Starmer, you get Angela Rayner run, you get Wes Streeting run. I should say Angela Rayner said that she'd never want to do that, but as ever in politics, the answer's no until it's yes. But the question always was, because of Angela Rayner's popularity, who would want to go up against her? But now she is out of the way. If you are someone who is thinking, do you know what? I'm not really very happy with how Keir is running things. I think I could do it better. You now suddenly maybe don't have to go up against Angela Rayner and maybe think you have a bit more of a clear run. So I think, you know, Keir Starmer has been made more vulnerable by this as well. This isn't just about giving Angela Rayner a kicking. The Prime Minister is arguably more vulnerable than he has been in recent years.
It wasn't too long ago in a book written by our colleagues Patrick Maguire and Gabriel Pogren, where there was lots of fascinating reporting about just how much Angela Rayner in the past had been agitating for leadership and how much those around her had been maybe trying to undermine Starmer and make her progress. Do we think that ambition has completely been killed off in her, or do you think she could be nurturing some kind of alternative power base on the backbenches?
Look, when she's been asked about this recently, she has said, no, I don't want to be party leader. She joked that, you know, it would age her by 10 years or something like that. But as ever in politics, the answer is no until it's yes. And I think you can see some of the things Angela Rayner has done over the last few months, even whilst in government, even whilst loyal, which have raised eyebrows internally. Look at that leaked letter she sent to Rachel Reeves about the kind of different things she could do to raise revenue.
Now, that memo was entitled Alternative Ways to Raise Revenue, in which she proposed, rather than making cuts to things like welfare, we instead boost taxes from £3 billion to £4 billion each year. Now, of course...
Look, it's not unusual for ministers to have these kind of discussions, but that memo didn't make its way into the public domain from nowhere, and I'm not insinuating that it was Angela Rayner herself that put it out there. I don't think that was the case, but someone obviously supportive of the fact that she was making this case made it known. So I think there have been things over the last few months where you can speculate that maybe that kind of fire of wanting leadership of the party might still be there, and she has a lot of support from colleagues, from Labour membership. She would still be a very strong contender.
But that's quite far down the line, isn't it? That someone would try and unseat the sitting Labour leader and Prime Minister.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's going to happen like next week, let's say, but there definitely are MPs speaking about this and speaking about it as potentially happening before the next election. There really is discontent about how things are being run. Of course, to take us back to what we're speaking about at the start, this whole reset is all about trying to fix that. But I think the fact that we had phase 2 launched last week, and now is this phase 3? Who knows? Is 2.5? I think the fact that Downing Street recognised that is even needed does kind of show that they know things aren't going well and something needs to be fixed. So look, let's see how the next year goes. Let's see how those local elections go next year, where it could be very, very damaging. Let's see how well reform continue to do. I think there's a lot of ifs and buts to come, but it's not outside of the realms of possibility that Keir Starmer faces a leadership challenge.
And of course, we've got Reform UK, as you mentioned there, trying to make hay with all of this. What about on the other side of the political spectrum and this new Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana party? How much do you think they're going to be nibbling away at Labour's feet?
I think they definitely are. And I think, there is a danger if you are the government and you are taking a more right-wing stance for Labour. We talk about this in the context of Labour here, that you are kind of disenfranchising those on the left of the party who, voted for Keir Starmer to be Labour leader based on, frankly, a lot more left-wing positions that he used to hold. So I think they are definitely going to pick up those. I think a complicating factor for this Corbyn-Sultana party is the Greens and their recent election of Zach Polansky as their leader. They will take a lot of that vote as well, especially if people think, well, do you know what, Labour clearly isn't interested in left-wing politics at the moment. So that vote could be split. But what this comes down to essentially is if you're Keir Starmer and his government and the mainstream Labour Party at the moment, you are fighting on multiple fronts. You are fighting to keep your electoral coalition together. You're fighting to keep your left-wingers on side. You're probably not right-wing enough for your right-wingers anyway, and you've got Reform snapping at your heels on that. So it's very, very tricky to hold that together at the moment.
And that's before you even get to a budget where you maybe raise people's taxes.
That's right. And, everything is going to be geared towards that now. What Rachel Reeves is going to have to do is very, very tricky. She has said that she will not break her fiscal rules. It becomes increasingly difficult to see how that is possible. Tax rises are basically on their way, and there is no way around that. It's going to be a very, very tricky sell.
Terry Scott, good to talk to you. Thank you. That was Geraldine Scott, Assistant Political Editor at The Times. The story at thetimes.com is how you can reach us with your thoughts, suggestions even perhaps as well. That is it from us today. Our producers were Olivia Case and Shabnam Grewal. The executive producer was Kate Lamble. Sound design and theme composition was by Mao Lassetto. And I'm Luke Jones. See you soon.